I've been looking forward to talking today with a guy. I think we've known each other close to 20 years. I was thinking about it. It's hard to believe it's been that long, and we've played a lot of music over the years, and I just love him to death. He is truly he's a brother to me, and I just think the world of him, and think he may be as good of a musician as I've ever been blessed enough to play with, and I just everybody that knows him feels the same way I do. So it's just a pleasure to welcome my pal, Mr. Shannon Wickline, to the podcast. Hey, Shannon.
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
I'm good. It's good to see your face.
Yes. It's good to see you. It's been too long, man.
It's been too long.
You're looking well.
Likewise, man. We've been chatting before we started about our quest to feel better as as Father Time catches up with us, and I think we're doing pretty good right now.
Yeah, I'm not trying to live forever, but as close to it as I can.
That's it.
I got a lot of music still yet to play, man.
That's exactly right. That's it. Everyone can't see you, but I can. You're just surrounded by really nice looking gear. I see a Leslie and a keyboard and is that a lap steel back there?
Yeah, it's a lap steel, Dobro, a semi-hollow body back there. Got 3 acoustics, all tuned up different. This is my little home music production studio.
Yeah, I
work with a lot of songwriters, and I work here, and this is my little sound dungeon. And so I spend easily 12, 14 hours a day down.
Oh wow, that's great. You have people that send you demo tracks or production tracks, and you put some stuff down and send it back.
Yeah, most times, a lot of the songwriters I work with, they'll just send me something that they're not even playing; they're just singing into a phone, or they'll send me a video of them of singing. Occasionally, I'll get lucky, and somebody will bang out something on a piano or play an acoustic part, and I'm like, okay, now I don't have to figure out where the parts go, and I know where it goes.
Yeah.
So that makes it much easier. But yeah, that's how it happens. They just sing into a phone and send me that. And then we have a series of conversations, and then I'll put together just a really rough scratch demo, send it to them for approval. And once I get the green light, we press on forward. And I just finished one this week for a gentleman here in Virginia. He's in Richmond. He's actually not a singer, not a songwriter. He had a song come to him, he said, in a dream.
Really?
And he wrote these words down, and he sent me the lyric sheet. And oddly enough, there was a couple of paragraphs that kind of repeated. And I'm like, well, there's your chorus. And he had kind of an idea of what he wanted it to sound like. And we just finished it for him, sent it to him, and he was thrilled to death with it. But my point being, all I had to work with was just him singing into a phone.
Right.
And an idea, him not being a singer, he doesn't know anything about melody. So it was all up to me.
Wow. Well, and I imagine it's these folks, number one, they trust you with their baby, right? I mean, that they're kind of bearing their soul here. And
that's what it is, man. It's, it's like a baby,
Mm-hmm.
And I've got pieces of music I've written. They're almost 30 years old, and I'll record them, and I'm like, man, I'd really like to have somebody else on it. Then I'll get somebody, and I'm like, oh, I don't like what they're doing,
Right.
So it, for somebody to give me that level of trust and really that, level of control, that's a gutsy move on their part. I can tell you.
Well, I can tell you that they went to the right place by asking you, because number one, you're going to bring what's necessary, but the other thing is that you have a very wide palette of what you can play and how you can play, because I know you do drum stuff there, you can do bass stuff, I mean, down to playing steel guitar parts, right? You're doing it all there.
I've been doing a lot of steel guitar parts on the keyboard here as of late. Wow. Somebody asked me today, I got a text message from a local songwriter here in Virginia, and he said, I hear you do pedal steel. And I'm like, you heard right. And that's all I said.
That's right.
There's a songwriter here in Lynchburg. His name is Percy Abel. He's a super cool guy. And I met Percy through a recording studio, the Fainting Goat. that I work at a lot. And when I first started working with Percy, I was working with him, with other players, kind of a band setting. And he found out that I could, kind of do all these parts myself. And then so we started doing that. And he said, man, I would really love it if I knew a pedal steel guitar player. I said, I might know a guy. And I said, I said, let me take this home and I'll contact said steel player and let me see what he can come up with. So I just came home and pulled up my plug in and started playing, did the part, and I sent it to him a couple of days later. And he said, man, that pedal steel guy's really good. And then he's like, who was it? And I was like, well, Percy, I'll give you I'll come clean. It was me. And I did it on a keyboard. He said, no way.
Yeah.
But,
you should have said, yeah. And he told me that it was going to cost $1,000 for that part. And you can just pay me and I'll pay him.
I know.
I've heard some of the stuff. I mean, it's unbelievable how close it sounds. I mean,
the technology is insane.
Yeah.
And I'm so old school. I've had some people ask me if I utilize the AI thing, and without question, absolutely not. Mm-hmm. No way. I grew up learning how to play, several different instruments. So even though I use the virtual instruments, I pull from, my knowledge of knowing how to play the actual instrument to make it sound real.
Right. It requires technique to do it, right?
Right. And I don't use any AI stuff. I don't have anything against it, personally. I want to do it, I still want to do it.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a shortcut or a jump to the front of the line kind of thing.
No, absolutely not. And music has gotten so watered down anyway over the years.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful to see, all over, Instagram and TikTok and stuff, man, just these kids, these kids playing real instruments and playing the hell out of them.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to see that. So I'm not, I got a handful of, kind of desktop producer friends, and they are always, man, what do you think about this AI thing? And I'm like, I'm not worried about it. Is it going to put anybody out of work? No. It's like
not.
anything. It's a tool. If you utilize it correctly, I'm sure it can be wonderful. It can help you. But again, I'm such a purist. If you can play a part, play it.
Yeah. Well, and to go back to what you were saying about playing the steel guitar stuff on the keyboard, I would imagine that if it was someone who didn't understand the voicings of a steel guitar or the limitations of the instrument, it probably wouldn't sound as good. But I know that you probably go into it thinking like a steel player, and you try to voice those chords the way they would.
Especially
and that's what it sounds
when
like.
I'm doing guitar parts on. I try really hard not to sound like a piano player playing, doing guitar stuff, because there's only 6 strings, but realistically, you can only use 4 fingers. Mm-hmm. So
that's right.
You got to think like that.
Yeah.
You have to think within the limitations.
Sure. Yeah. Was guitar, or what was your first instrument?
My very first instrument ever was drums. I started playing drums when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And I did that. I didn't touch a piano until I was about 11 or 12. And when we always had a piano in our house growing up, but I was always so, gung-ho about the drums. And then I got to hit things and, you know, and sometimes it sounded good. It's like, oh, this sounds like a beat. Okay. But yeah, initially when I sat down to a piano, I did not like it.
Really?
This is not for me at all. And for a long time, the white keys, I would play with my 2 index fingers. And anytime I had to switch to the black keys, I'd use my thumbs.
Really?
And then once I learned, I was like, wait a minute, I have other fingers I can use. And that just kind of like, oh, well, wait a minute. I just started opening up more doors, and I'm like, okay. And then I was hooked. Is
the majority of the work you get now, is it as a keyboard player, or do you do a lot of work as a guitar player? I'm sure that a lot of people that are listening to this know you play guitar, but maybe a lot of people don't. I think you're as good of a guitar player as you are a keyboard player.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm just blown away with how well you play guitar. And so how much of that are you doing these days?
I'm not doing as much as I used to. I've gotten really, I've gotten really lazy and really, I've gotten really good at doing guitar parts on the keys. Again, with the technology that we have now, it's just too easy. I'm in a basement of a really noisy house. We've got dogs and all kinds of stuff, neighbors, and we got all kinds of things. So, to put up a condenser microphone in front of an acoustic guitar here is next to impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll, pull up, plug in, if I want to do like an arpeggio style, I've got stuff for that. If I want to do like a strummer, I've got stuff for that. And man, it's crazy. It's gotten to the point now where I've forced myself to start playing guitar again, because when I started working more in the recording studio and I wanted to kind of contribute real guitar parts to these tracks I was producing, I had to relearn how to play. It's been that long since I've played. So had to get the calluses built back up on my fingers. So when I was playing rhythm guitar and stuff, man, playing acoustic, my hands would start hurting. And I'd be like, man, I got to take a break. So I forced myself to like physically start playing the guitar again.
Wow.
Yeah. So cause I've been doing so much of it on the keys.
Yeah.
And so much to the point where I can't tell anymore when I cut a real guitar track versus, I mean, they're that good. They are that good.
That is crazy. Yeah. Well, and I've heard stuff coming out of your studio, stuff that you've recorded, and I'm like, what? I'm just thinking about,
insane.
What's that?
I said the virtual instruments, man, they're insane.
Yeah. Well, and I just think about the sheer economics of it. If you're working with a songwriter, you're saving them money, right? Mm-hmm. Because they're not having to get a bunch of studio time and then bring in 5 or 6 people to track.
Right.
It's a one person that can put all this down. So,
and you're dealing with one schedule. You know what I mean? You're not dealing with 5, 6 guys and, such and such is going to be late. His kid threw up or, just whatever,
mm-hmm.
So you have less life to get in the way.
Yeah. What's the music scene like around there?
It's your typical local music scene. There are some really fantastic musicians here. Sadly, this isn't really quite the music town. It used to be a better music town. There used to be more venues here to play. A lot of venues are just kind of closing up,
Yeah.
A lot of the business, you had some COVID casualties and, so it's a typical, there's a lot of breweries, a lot of wineries. There's plenty of places to play. It's just a matter of, how much do you want to hustle, really? And there's some people here that are really, really good, good enough to, go to the next level. And I've been lucky enough to work with a couple of them. And that's kind of what I'm telling them. I'm like, well, if you're going to take this to the next level, you're probably going to have to get out of here.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell them. I did. I left and came back. I oddly enough had no plans of coming back. My wife brought me back. I was going to Texas, but
I'm in St. Louis because my wife is from St. Louis. And
mm-hmm.
I get it, know.
Chase these ladies all over the place.
That's it. I'd follow her anywhere. So
same.
Did you when you left Virginia, did you go straight to Nashville or did you go somewhere else first?
I went to Chattanooga first.
Okay.
I went to Chattanooga. Yeah. There was a girl involved.
Mm.
But it worked out wonderful because it's, right smack in the middle of Atlanta and Nashville.
Yeah.
So I initially, I went there to try to go to, crack into the Nashville scene. And I had these big ideas about, going in and, being this session player that, I'm going to be the one guy that they call. You're not going to call these 6, 7 guys. You're going to call this one guy. And I found out really quick that they don't play that game there.
No,
they don't like that. I didn't like those rules. So I took my little hurt feelings and I left and I went to Atlanta the first time and loved it and started doing some gigs there and ultimately got a gig that took me right on back to Nashville.
Yeah.
And that's when my road kind of career really kicked in.
Yeah. I am forever grateful that I was able to play music in Atlanta, Georgia, because and people from other cities around the U.S. may not even realize it, but Atlanta has a great music scene.
Yes, it does.
With a whole lot of great musicians in it.
Phenomenal musicians. I mean, as good, if not better, than Nashville.
Yeah.
You know, I tell you, man, I owe Atlanta a huge shout out, man, because I'm telling you, when I left this little tiny area in Roanoke, Virginia, and I went, and the first time I walked into this little blues club, I don't even know if it's there anymore, Darwin's. It was at a different location, man. I learned really quick. Nashville was one thing, some of the best players in the world are in Nashville, but there's just something, I don't know what it is, man, about those guys in Atlanta and, like guys in Austin and, all that kind of stuff. There's just something different.
There's a depth to it, right? Yeah.
It spoke to me.
Yeah.
And I learned really quick. I was like, it's put up or shut up.
Mm-hmm.
Step up or step aside. And man, that was for me, that was some of the best music education that money can't buy.
Yeah.
Just playing with some of the best players I've ever worked with in my life.
Yeah. Who did you
being one of them, my friend.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I'm thankful to Atlanta for the fact that you and I met each other on a gig one night, and it was like immediately like, oh, okay, where have you been?
And you know what? You was talking about that earlier. God, I didn't realize it has been almost 20 years.
It's been almost 20 years.
20? What do you mean? 2006, 2007, somewhere in there?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
God.
So and I think I'm going to try to figure out the lineage here. I was playing with a guy named Wilson Braswell and his band, and Jimmy Mouton was playing drums. Oh, yeah. And Jimmy and I go way back, played a lot of gigs together over the years. And you knew Jimmy.
Mm-hmm. I did a session with Jimmy.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And I think you came in and you were back in town, and you came out to play that gig with us. And I remember it was at the Derby over in like Alpharetta area. And we set up and started playing, and I'm just looking over like, holy crap, who is this guy playing? Man, oh man, oh man. And it was just an immediate connection for me. I was couldn't believe it. And that was it.
Yeah. And then we had a blast, man. We were doing some gigs. We did a lot of gigs together.
Yeah, we did.
Remember we were doing that duo thing at what was that little Irish pub?
Yeah, up at Good Old Days.
Good Old Days.
I was thinking about, I kind of like rolling through the Rolodex of memories. I remember you and I played like a birthday party up there one Saturday, and we walked in on the break, and the guy was like, hey, would you guys like to play here every weekend? And we're like, yeah, sure. And we were playing, right. I think, playing there every Saturday, and then they started hiring us every Sunday as well. We were playing there 2 days a week.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we were just doing like some acoustic stuff. No, I had a keyboard too.
Had a keyboard. You playing some guitar, and then I was doing a lot of the singing, and you would sing too.
Yeah,
it was fun.
That was a lot of fun, man.
You know,
Good Old Days. Yeah, appropriately named.
Yes, exactly.
That's awesome.
And look, I knew at some point this name was going to come up, but we got to play a lot together with our pal, the late Mr. John McKnight,
Yeah, he was one of the ones that, man, again, there's just some players, you can't really articulate it because it's so impossible to explain. But there's just some people that just have that extra something.
Yeah.
And you can't explain it, but you immediately know it when you see it. And he was one of those guys. And he and I, him and a couple, kind of a rotating a couple of different bass players, man, we were the rhythm section there for a while.
Yeah.
And man, the good old days. That was some good times.
Yeah. It was so easy to play with him. I mean, such a great drummer, but
and then be back there grooving like crazy. And then just, you hear this voice singing. You're like, who the hell is that?
Yeah.
You turn around and it's John.
It's John.
Like the drummer's doing that?
The drummer's doing that. And you can, and then I think it makes sense because it's like, of course he can play with that much finesse. He played drums he played drums the way that he would want someone to play while he was singing. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. He just played perfectly to the song.
And it's so funny that you describe it that way. There's a guitar player that I've worked with here. He's a great songwriter too. And that's what he says. He's like, man, I just play, for that song. He can do, all sorts of stuff, but he's very selfless,
Mm-hmm.
He just plays for the song. And man, John was one of them, man. One of the best drummers I've worked with and one of the coolest guys, man. Just such a fun hang.
Yeah. I remember we did that gig. I don't remember where it was outside of Nashville, but the three of us rolled in. I think I was living in Louisiana at the time, and we just kind of rolled in and didn't know what we were going to do and played that show. And it was so much fun.
That was I remember that. That was in a little tiny town about an hour west of Nashville called Centerville.
Yeah.
And there was this little tiny pavilion building we played at, and they asked me to, if I could bring a band in there. And I'm like, I guess I can. Sure.
Yeah.
And it's right. Cause I brought my full rig. I had this Korg. I had my Nord C2D and the Leslie.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had that Rolly Seaboard.
Yes, you
and
did.
I had my laptop and I had all the guitar stuff. So I remember that. I was doing like rhythm stuff with the left hand and doing the guitar parts with the roll. That's right. That was a blast, man.
That was so much fun. And it was like, we had a list we had some tunes that we were going to do. And then it was just like, John, just play a groove. And you look at me and say, let's play in this key.
It turned into like one of those nights in Darwin.
Yeah. And it was just that.
And there was maybe 20 people in the crowd.
Yeah. And they were loving it.
And it was one of the most fun. Yeah. That was a blast. I do remember that.
Yeah. That was fun. I remember Lisa and Sophia were with me, and we started doing a tune, and I looked over her and I was like, hey, get your phone out and record this. Cause I just had a feeling it was going to be something special. And yep, John was singing, John was playing drums, you were playing. And sure enough, it was special.
I think I've actually got a video of that somewhere here. I need to dig that up.
Yeah, you do.
If I do, I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
I got the whole show, I believe.
Oh, man.
Like 2.5 hours or 3 hours or something.
We played a long time.
We played a long time. We didn't want to quit.
Yeah, we didn't want to quit.
Had a lot of fun. That's how you know it's good, man.
Yeah. So somewhere along the way, I remember you started playing with James Otto.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. How did that gig happen? Man, what a great talent he is.
That guy has such a huge, just a powerful voice. And man, he's a great songwriter too. When I had moved back from Atlanta, I'm trying to remember the timeline here. I think I moved back to Nashville. I think I was back in Nashville. Anyway, yeah, I was back in Tennessee at this time, and I worked. I'd met this guy who was a tour manager for the Gatlin brothers. Larry Gatlin and the Gatlin brother. And he got my number somehow, and their keyboard player was going to take like a 6-month gig in Branson or something, and they needed a sub, so he called me. And so I went out and did these shows with Larry Gatlin and the Gatlin brothers, and he said, man, I'm working with this other guy, this James Otto guy, and he's got a song that's been kind of climbing the charts, gradually. It's over the past year, and it's really starting to do something. And he's like, he needs some players. And so I was like, well, sure, set up an audition. And he called me and he said, well, he needs a guitar player. Can you play guitar? He said, I heard you play guitar. I said, yeah, no problem. I'll play guitar. Sure. And then he said, can you sing harmony? I'm like, yeah, no problem. So I learned the songs and went and did the thing. And he's, I learned the low harmonies, because you can hear I don't really have that high of a voice. And I got there and he's like, listen, I need you to do the high harmony. Oh God. Because he can get up there. He said he's got a big range on it. And so we started doing some stuff, and he wanted to hire me as his guitar player, but he was torn between me and this other guy. And the guy's name was Todd, the tour manager. He said, Shannon's actually a piano player and you need a piano player. He said, that guy's a piano player. He said, yeah. He said, tell him he's got the gig.
No kidding.
So he hired me, never heard me play the first note. And he said, he's like, I really want this other guitar player too, but I don't need 2 guitar players. And he said, and Todd said, well, he's a piano player, and if you ever go out and do some radio dates, you got your acoustic player right there.
Right.
So he hired me as his piano player without hearing me.
Wow.
Play the first note.
I think the way you play, the way you approach the parts that you play, were just suited perfectly for the way he sings, because he's a soulful singer. He was another one. I heard him sing and I heard his songs, and it was such a great blend. I mean, that's what he called it, country soul. Mm-hmm. And I just said, I have to work with this guy. I mean, he gets it. And fortunately he did. I got to work with him for over 4 years.
Wow. Yeah, it was a blast. I tell you what, man, I got to do some recording with him, and he hired me as his backup singer on a couple of things, because we just blended so well together. And his voice, he would get to just like right at the top of his range, and singing those high harmonies with him actually extended my vocal range. At that time, I mean, I can't do it now, but I hadn't sang that stuff in years. But it actually extended my vocal range, so our voices would kind of like start to break up at the same time.
Oh, that's great!
And and it just worked out so good. But yeah, he was always fun to sing with.
Yeah, and he's a songwriter too, right?
He's a great songwriter. Yeah, he's written some stuff. I think Chris Hansen. I think it was Chris Hansen. When I'm holding her.
Yeah. Okay.
James wrote that about his daughter. He wrote that. Of course, he co-wrote In Color with Jamie Johnson.
He co-wrote that song?
Yeah, he co-wrote that with Jamie Johnson and Lee Miller.
Wow. Yep. There's some pretty good mailbox money back in the day of CDs.
And yeah, so he's done pretty well for himself as a songwriter. And then the song that was climbing the charts for like over about a year was, of course, his big hit, Just Got Started Loving You. He wrote that one. Mm-hmm. And that one went all the way #1. So
yeah, I remember that song.
That treated him good.
Just sings the pants off of it too.
That's such a fun tune to play.
Yeah,
it's just a laid back groove, man. He just sang the hell out of it.
Yeah,
guy's got a great voice.
Yeah,
big old powerful voice.
Man, yeah, that had to have been a great gig, because I mean, there's nothing better than to get to back up great singers, right? I mean, it's just so inspiring to hear people that sing their tails off.
On that level, I'll never tell him this, but he's probably the best singer I've worked with.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Don't tell him I said that. His head's already big enough.
James, if you're listening to this, he's talking about some other guy.
There's another James Otto.
Yeah.
It's that German guy.
It's such a common name. I mean,
it's such a... But no, he's one of the best, if not the best, on that level.
Absolutely,
just a great voice. My God.
Well, I know that people across Radio Land will send me angry postcards if I don't ask you about the time that you spent playing with Mr. Charlie Daniels.
I didn't know you had anybody that knew me well enough to be mad enough at you to send.
Shannon, you listen. You just have no idea the people.
I'm telling you,
the fan
I guess
mail.
Not.
I feel like I need to go into witness protection from.
Charlie Daniels.
I remember you and I hanging out. You hadn't been with Charlie very long when you and I saw each other. It's a fun. I remember this because I have some pictures of our kids.
Stone Mountain.
Yeah. You were playing, and I was singing the national anthem at that.
That's right.
Gig.
That's right.
At Stone Mountain.
And Mouton was there.
Yes, that's right.
Jimmy Mouton came out too.
That's right.
That's right. It was a reunion.
Yeah, it was a reunion. And I just remember listening to you guys play and just thinking, again, just like I said about you playing with James, I'm like, well, they couldn't have gotten a better guy for this gig than Shannon.
Well, they probably could have, but I was the only one that showed up.
What is that? Sometimes it's less about about ability and more about availability.
I know, right? I know. We do it for $50. Yes.
Yeah. I normally do it for less than that, but yeah.
That's right.
I just think that when you came into that band, you just brought a freshness and a level of energy that kind of put a little extra wind in the sails.
Charlie, when he offered me the job, that's what he told me. He said, I want you to be you. He said, I heard you play, and that's the reason I hired you. He's like, I don't want another Taz. He said, there'll never be another Taz. I don't want another one. He said, I want you to be you. He said, now obviously, the really important parts that Taz wrote, play those. I was like, sure, of course.
Yeah.
He said, but outside of that, it's you. Do it. And I was like, man, that a Nashville artist telling you that,
right?
It's always, they're always telling you, man, just like the record.
Play it like the record.
He's like, no, man, put your own personality into it.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
How did, I don't even know if I remember this. How did that gig come to you? How did that happen?
Well, I was still working with James. James was, I think at the time he was kind of between record labels. I think he had just, he was finished up with Warner, or they dropped him or something. Either way, that was done. And there was another label he was trying to get on, like maybe Big Machine or something like that, but it never materialized. But anyway, Taz, Charlie's original keyboard player, he actually got killed in a car wreck in October of 2012. And I remember around Thanksgiving, people are like, man, you really ought to audition for that gig, and I'm like, man, first of all, I don't want to be that guy. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be that guy. Call up somebody, especially in those kind of circumstances.
Yeah.
And again, working with James, for the time that I did, man, I just really believed in and still do. I mean, I believed in that guy, and I'm just like, somebody's going to pick him up, and I'm going to stick it out with you, and that's what I wanted to do. I really did. But he, as life kind of does, some priorities changed, and, his wife, Amy, they discovered they were pregnant with their, now 14-year-old daughter, Ava, at the time. And so I think he kind of wanted to be home more. And so I kind of sort of read the writing on the wall, and I really truly wasn't looking for anything. And a couple of friends of mine were telling me about the thing with Taz, and you should go, you should really try that out. So when I first went to Nashville, Pat McDonald was one of the first guys I met, Charlie's drummer at the time.
Boy, oh boy.
And what a phenomenal drummer, man, that guy is. Good God.
Wow.
And I met him at some blues jams, and this was back in like 99, 2000, somewhere in there. And so we stayed in touch for a little while. Then we just, lost touch as you tend to do sometimes. But I reached out to him on Facebook. I said, hey, it's been quite a while since we've talked and heard about what happened. I said, if you need help covering some dates until you find this, I'm sure you got somebody. I said, but if you need help covering some dates till you find the guy you want, I'd be happy to help out. And I said, if nothing else, let's catch up, grab some sushi or something. And he called me and said, man, dude, I forgot all about you. Man, you'd be great for this. I'm like, what do you mean I'd be great for it? He's like, well, Charlie, I think, wants to get a keyboard player, because there for the first month or so, Charlie didn't. I don't think he wanted to. He couldn't
look over and see someone else. He'd rather see no one there than see someone
and that's
different.
where he was, and understandably so. Taz was with
sure.
him for 45 years or something like that. Crazy, but so understandably so. But I just happened to reach out at the right time, and Pat said, well, let me talk to Charlie. Let me see where he's at with everything. And I don't know, 3-4 days later, I get a call from a number I didn't recognize, but it's a 615 area code. And I'm like, oh, all right, pick it up, and it's Charlie Daniels. I'm like, oh, all right.
That big old voice. Yeah.
And he, and it was just so weird because I normally don't answer, if I don't know the number, I'll just send it to voicemail. But something was like, you might want to pick this up. Mm-hmm. And I said, hello. He said, I'm looking for Shannon. Like, you found him. Shannon, it's Charlie Daniels. I'm like, well, I'll be damned if it ain't. Wow. I mean, because, of course, that happens every day.
Right. Yeah.
And he said, well, Pat tells me that, you're interested in coming, helping us out. And I was like, well, I originally said I'd cover some dates until, I said, I don't want to step on toes. And he said, well, we want to try some people out. And I went in, and I had about a week to learn 3 or 4 songs. And then he had a scheduling conflict. Then he called me and said, can we do it the next week? I said, sure. So I was like, you know what? This is my gig to lose. I'm going to make it impossible for them to tell me no. So I got this extra time. I want to learn the whole damn show. And I did. I learned the whole thing. Got there. First thing they said, where's your charts? I'm like, ain't no charts here, son. I ain't got no charts. I'm old school. Just like you guys. And so we started playing, and Charlie's like, do you know these songs? I said, Charlie, I learned the whole show. And we played about 4 or 5 tunes. And then, of course, he wanted to play Devil, and we played that. And we were at his recording studio, he called me into the main room, the mixing room, and he said, listen, man, I love the way you play. I'd like to have you come out and do a weekend, see how it goes. And I said, yeah, I'd love to. And it just so happens that the gig that they were doing was right outside of Houston, which I was on a cruise that week before with James doing a country cruise, and it ported in Houston. So I'm just like, well, this is wonderful. So while we were on the shuttle bus, I get a phone call, and James is like, what was that? I'm like, I'm just doing a gig, but I'm doing a fill-in gig for somebody. He's like, who? I said, Charlie Daniels. He goes, oh, I just lost my keyboard player.
Oh, man.
I was like, no, man, I don't know. But so I did the gig, and I did that weekend with him. And that first night, I thought it was just, theatrics or whatever. He introduced me as the new keyboard player. And I'm like, well, okay. And didn't think too much of it. So got home Sunday, and he called me Monday and offered me the job and said, man, everybody loves the way you play. And, everybody said they jived, really well with you on the bus. So why don't you come on in here Wednesday and let's talk about it? And then the rest is history. Almost 9 years with him.
Yeah, you were with him up until the end.
Up until the very end. Yep. COVID sidelined everything, and then he passed away that year.
I know that Charlie did and still does. I mean, probably one of the most loyal fan bases.
Oh my gosh.
On the planet.
Yeah.
And was it an easy transition for you? You'll never replace Taz, but stepping into that, how was that with the fan base?
I didn't really know what to expect, because I didn't realize it didn't dawn on me exactly what I had fallen into until a few months after the fact. So especially on social media, I made myself available to everybody. And I don't know what it was, Brad. It was just something inside of me that just said, you know what? I don't want to be the guy. I don't want to be seen as the guy taking over. I don't want to be seen as that guy. I just want to be seen as, a qualified person for the job. That's all I want to be seen as.
Yeah.
I So I didn't realize, Taz had, and still does, it has a massive fan base of his own, and I inherited that.
Yeah, sure.
So the short answer to your question, the transition was amazing. The fans, the organization, I mean, everybody, man, just welcomed me with open arms. It was wonderful. The first year or so I was there, I'd come up to, people would come up to me and, they'd have stories about Taz, and the next thing they know, man, they're just, they're crying in my chest.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what it was. And I guess I was just kind of there, just letting them know, hey, I'm going to take care of this position. I'm going to take care. I take this seriously. And, I just want you guys to know you're in good hands. That's really all it was.
Yeah.
Just me making myself, really publicly available to all these people.
Yeah.
And like it shows, man, they would just, come up, like I said, and just talk about Taz. And, then it got to the point where, some of them are like, man, we're loving what you're bringing to the band. We love it. And I did a show, I got to do a show, in, Massachusetts, where that's where he was from, and a lot of his family got to come out. So I got to meet them, and got to meet I met his mom.
Really?
And so that was an amazing experience, just to kind of, get to meet them. And they were, again, just everybody was just wonderful, just treated me like families since day one. It was amazing. That was an incredible experience.
Well, and they always say, never meet your heroes. And, and I feel very lucky and blessed that I got to get to know Charlie over the last few years, us doing that Angelus show, Angelus event every year in Florida. And then we would hang out whenever you guys were rolling through town, and there was no public persona and a private persona to Charlie, like you see a lot with big names. Mm-hmm. He was the same dude off stage and on stage.
I say it all the time with Charlie. What you saw was exactly what you got.
That's it.
He was as genuine and real as they come.
Yeah.
And that's many of the things I just loved about him.
Yeah.
He was a cool guy.
Lisa always jokes about the fact that every time we would see him, he knew that we knew each other because of music, but he never wanted to talk about music.
No.
He was like, so how your Braves doing?
Yeah.
He always wanted to talk about baseball or something. He was like the only person in the room that wasn't aware that he was Charlie Daniels. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
No,
I totally get that. And to your point, we'd be out on the road somewhere, and, occasionally he'd take us all out to a nice restaurant or something. And, we'd all sit down and, large group of us, cause he had the whole crew and everything. And people are coming around like, you guys are somebody. Who are you? They're always talking to him, and there's like, well, we're musicians, we're in a band. And they asked Charlie, what do you do? He's like, well, I'm the fiddle player in the Charlie Daniels band. And that's, serious, not being joking. That's what I do. I'm a fiddle player in Charlie Daniels band. That's what he said. And, and it's always like, people would take a couple of seconds. They're like, wait a minute, Charlie Daniels, are you Charlie Daniels? Yeah,
that's me.
But he wasn't doing that to be funny. He just, to your point, he was an international icon. Everybody knew it except him. It
was amazing.
Incredible.
And I have to ask one more question about him. Tell me about that freaking Les Paul. That
Les Paul.
For everybody that's listening to this, he had a Les Paul that he played.
Yes.
What was the serial number on it?
Number 2.
Number 2.
Number 1 was in the hands of Les Paul.
And number 2 was in the hands of Charlie Daniels.
Gave Charlie number 2.
Holy moly.
Now that's some bragging rights.
Yeah.
I have number 2. I have the second Les Paul ever made. The first one is the guy who made it has it.
You showed me that guitar, and I just about fell on the floor. I could not believe it.
And that thing played like a dream, dude.
Oh man.
Yeah. Number 2.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
Nuts. Yeah.
How is I've always wanted to ask you this. How do you keep it internally fresh playing the same set every night? Or do you?
I would always, I don't know. I I would always try different things, probably the guys in the band probably didn't, and the crowd definitely didn't notice, but I would. And sometimes you're just like, man, that was really awesome. And sometimes it's just like, yeah, don't ever do that again. I don't know why I was thinking that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and then sometimes you just, you're on autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
You know how it goes, but you get on autopilot, but yeah, you try to do little things here and there.
Yeah.
Just try to freshen it up. And the great thing about it is when you do something, then one of the guys pick up on it, or if Charlie noticed it, you're like, oh, hey man, that was cool. Do that again.
Yeah. Was it Chris? Is that the guitar player?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
man. Chris. Yeah. He was the one. Yeah. Chris and Bruce. Yeah. Chris he's a screaming guitar player.
Bad boy, man.
He can play.
I just remember you're talking about, some nights, you really go for it. I'm just thinking about that. You telling me that night you guys did a show with Willie Nelson and Bruce Hornsby.
Oh man, that was probably one of the strangest bills. But Bruce Hornsby, man, I'm just going to full confession. I went full fanboy mode. I mean, it's Bruce Hornsby.
It's Bruce Hornsby. And I think that there's a large subsection of the world that listens to music that thinks that Bruce Hornsby is the way it is in Mandolin Rain, and that's about it. And that is not Bruce Hornsby. Mm-mm. I mean, it's a tiny little sliver of him, but there's a whole lot more going on under the hood.
That guy has forgotten more stuff than so many piano players will ever learn. He is incredible. And just sitting, 10, 12 feet from him, just watch. He's effortless, and he's a master. Yeah, and he just makes it look so easy. And that band, oh my God, that band. And Sonny Emery was playing with him.
Oh well, there you go.
So I got to talk to him a little bit. We talking about our Atlanta people, and man,
I played in a band for a long time with his brother.
Man.
Yeah,
that's a mean rhythm section.
Mean rhythm section.
That's one of the best bands I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And they just make it look so easy.
I played a gig one night with John Thompson, who's Bruce's B3 player. JT.
I love that dude.
And I was asking him, like, what's that gig like? He said, man, there's no set list.
Mm-hmm.
He tells us the first tune before we go on stage. That's it.
Oh, really?
He said, I'll tell you. He tells us what we're going to open with. Yeah. He said he takes requests all night of our tunes and other people's tunes. And a lot of nights he'll play our material in different keys just to keep us on our toes.
Yeah. I mean, he was, they were totally following him. I mean, and just, you can tell that, I mean, that band is a well-oiled machine. They are so good. God, people don't. And the crazy thing, we were somewhere in the middle of nowhere, like Minnesota or something like that. And I rolled my keyboard case, like I said, man, right behind Bruce. And I was sitting up on top of my keyboard case, man. I was like swinging my legs and everything, man. This total kid in a candy store. And at one point, man, he got up and he comes over and he goes, you know what? Cause there was so many just blank stares. People didn't know what was going on. It's like, these guys are crushing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And people are just like, they deer in a headlight.
Yeah.
Just completely lost. And so Bruce Hornsby, he kind of gets up during like one of the other guys' solo. He comes over to me. He goes, man, these people don't know what the fuck is going on. I said, I do. And I appreciate you so much, man. But do it for me. Don't forget them. Do it for me. I love you, man.
I have more love for you than all those people combined.
I told him. I said, man, I said, there's enough appreciation right here. He said, what do you want to hear? I said, I got to hear that Spider Fingers, man.
Oh, of course, gosh. That Hot House record is just so good. So good.
The first time I heard that, when he switched hands and he's doing and he's doing the thing with the left hand he switched with the left hand. I was like, this guy's the baddest man on the planet.
It's like when you watch a really good drummer that has that like 4-limb independence thing going on where they're like playing 4 very different things at the same time. He does the same independence thing between his two hands.
His left hand, right hand independence is crazy.
It is crazy.
It's insane how just technically that guy's badass. He's one of the best ever. I love Bruce Hornsby. I'm a huge Bruce Hornsby fan.
Who were some other, because I'm sure there were influences and people that were heroes of yours on piano or B3?
I was a huge Billy Powell fan. I love Billy Powell. Before he passed away, when I was working with James, I got to meet him very briefly, and he was on a bunch of medication. I told him, I said, dude, you have no idea, the influence you had on me. And he's talking about never meet your heroes. He couldn't understand a thing I was saying, but bless his heart. I mean, he was just so far gone at that point. But I said it, he heard it.
Well, and I hear a lot of in your B3 playing. I hear some influence of like Chuck Leavell. I hear that in there.
One. Love Chuck Leavell.
Yeah.
Him and Charlie Hayward were actually good buddies.
Really?
And a couple of years before Charlie passed away, we got to do Charlie every year always did this thing, and it's got so big they started having to do it at Bridgestone Arena. It was like a big military benefit that Charlie always did every year. And so one year they wanted to give the year before we were the backing band for some people, and so the next year they wanted to kind of do something different. So they actually got Don Was and brought him in, and he brought in Chuck Leavell. And
Don Was has kind of become the MD on a lot of these things, hasn't he?
He's cool, man. He knows the right guys to get.
And so he brought Chuck in.
He brought Chuck Leavell, man, and we were, I never will forget it, man. We were at SIR, I believe, in Nashville, and we were going over some stuff, and we were going over one of Charlie's songs, and Charlie wasn't there yet. We were just doing instrumentally. And they all, I think we were playing like Caballo Diablo or something, one of those deep cut crazy, things. And afterwards they were all like applauding and stuff. And I see Chuck Leavell and I'm like, oh God, here we go. And he comes, man, he's such a cool guy, man. We talked for a little bit, and he's like, man, I love your playing. I'm like, well, you've probably heard it. I'm stealing all my stuff from you. But he couldn't have been cooler. Such a nice guy, man. And so one of the highlights of my life was getting to play on stage with Chuck Leavell. And he was the crappy thing about it, if I can complain at all, he was on the opposite side of the stage. So we were kind of communicating. I was like, you playing organ, you playing piano? He's like, I'm just playing what you're not playing. I'm not going to play.
Yeah. I just want to watch you, man. I just want to
listen to you. I know what I sound like.
Man, I've gone back and listened to that Sea Level album. It is just unbelievable.
Yeah. And again, just that piano solo on Jessica. I mean, come on. I wish I'd asked him about that, but I wanted to ask. It's like, dude, that's such a cool solo, man.
It sounds like it could be Pig Robbins playing, but it sounds like it could be a jazz piano, like Thelonious Monk playing or something.
It had that this little extra something.
Yeah,
you heard it and you're just like, oh man, that's perfect.
It's perfect.
And the stuff that he did with, Eric Clapton, on that, the whole Unplugged record, man, when they did, I remember, man, he laid down a scorcher of a solo on this one. And I did tell him about this. I said, man, I said, dude, I said, all your other stuff is killer. I said, but man, in the early 90s, I said, man, you did this thing with Eric Clapton. I said, and you guys played this song called Old Love. I said, and dude, and you just, I said, dude, I have to know, was that business or was that personal? Because that was incredible. He goes, I don't know if I remember that. And I'm like, oh, please.
He's forgotten more.
He's like, which one are you talking about? I'm like, the one that was all over TV.
Yeah.
He's like, well, there was more than just one.
Man.
But no, he was awesome.
I tell my daughter all the time that one of the saddest things for me to realize is how short life is, considering how much great music there is.
I know.
You could spend the rest of your life trying to listen to all of it, and you never will. There's
Mm-mm.
just that much.
I tell you, I believe, from personally, I think from the 60s through the probably mid 2000s, especially, but really the 60s, the 70s, man, that's when it was, all the samples and all the loops and all the crap that everybody's stealing.
Yeah.
Where'd that stuff come from?
Exactly.
The 60s, the 70s, even the 80s. That was just, I joke with Angie, my wife, all the time. I tell her, I say, I really feel like I was born about 20 to 30 years too late.
Yeah.
I wish I would have come up during that time.
I feel the same way.
The music.
There was so much groove and just so much harmonic language in those songs. The chord progressions. I mean, I don't want to say it's non-existent anymore, but it's close, right? I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on in those songs.
There was a lot of stuff, and everything was different.
Yeah.
It's like I said, everything is so watered down now. It's, especially the last, how many years, the same formula has been coming out of, like Nashville and this stuff. It's like, man, God, bring it back to that.
Yeah.
Every song had an identity. They wasn't taken from this, they wasn't taken from that, and all that kind of thing.
Right. That's it. And it wasn't, this sells, so we're going to exploit the heck out of it and just saturate the market with as many people that sound like that.
Right.
Because that's what is selling. And by selling, I mean,
yeah, no, you're right. And one of the things I miss about, the old days is everybody went into the studio, and everybody, they all wrote those parts together, You go back and look on all those album credits. You talk about what an awesome person Charlie was, on all those album credits. It's the band.
Yeah.
It's not just Charlie, everybody contributed those parts, man. Everybody got, writer's credits.
Yeah.
And that's what, I love the technology. I love, people, emailing me a song and it's like, hey, can you put a piano on it? And I do. And, it takes me an hour, if that, and the next thing I know, I get a little PayPal notification. But man, I miss the days of just going into a studio, just going into a live room, and with some guys, and that's where the magic happens.
It does. When there's the skeleton of a song at most, and that collective creativity that happens that builds this thing around it. You can't even put it into words what that experience is like. It's
one of the best. There's not too many greater feelings on the planet than that when it's I'll take a quote from the A-Team. I love it when a plan comes together.
I love it when a plan comes together.
It just when it all comes together, you're like, man, and you're listening to the playback, and it's not even in the playback, man, just like they're in the moment. It's like, man, this
And playing live in front of an audience is its own amazing thing.
Yes.
But nothing like it. But at the same time, playing in the studio, getting to, and that there's nothing like that either.
And that's always been my passion.
Yeah.
I love playing live in front of people, but that's not what I went to Nashville to do.
Yeah.
I went to Nashville. I wanted album credits. I didn't want travel points.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But,
exactly.
But that's the thing. And kind of being a multi-instrumentalist, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be, I wanted to, I guess this is probably my ego talking or whatever, but I wanted to be among the conversation, when people are like, who should we call? Or I wanted to be one of the guys that, I've always wanted to be one of the first call guys.
Yeah.
And that's what I went to Nashville to do. And I wasn't a first call guy, but I was one of the first people that, they called, just in a different, not in the studio world, but in the touring world. But I wanted to do that I love just working in the studio.
Yeah. Well, you bring such a wealth of knowledge and experience, into whatever it is you're playing, and I've always been so blown away with how well you're never pigeonholed into any type of music, right? And I know that's by design, right? You don't.
Yeah.
You don't want to be a country guitar player or a blues B3 player. You want to be able to play whatever it is they need, right?
If I have to be honest with you, if somebody asks me, what do what type of music, if you're playing B3, what are you playing? I'd tell them, I said, man, I'm a gospel player,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really what I bring,
Yeah.
everybody's like, what's the secret to your sound? I'm like, Jesus. But no, seriously. I mean, I grew up in church. I love that sound. Like I said, I always played drums, but there was a C3 there, and man, that first time I heard that thing, I'm like, man, what the hell is that? My God. But I didn't really pay much attention to them until later in life. But yeah, that gospel thing, man, is so deeply ingrained in my sound.
Yeah, there's something about the B3. I can't explain what I think of it when I hear it, but I can tell you the way it makes me feel.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can't say that about every instrument, but you can say that about the B3.
And when people come up to me, one of the best compliments I get, they're like, you grew up in church, didn't you? And I'm just like, oh, you can hear it.
You can hear it.
Yes.
Yeah. That's it.
And that's kind of what I've, especially playing like, B3. I just love that old gospel sound. I love it. There's nothing like it. A lot of music tries to copy it. It's just some feel good music, man.
It is, and it's honest, and it's from the heart, and you can't. There's no substitute for that. Right. And people try to duplicate it, but you're right. It's just the real thing.
And to your point, I mean, as a kid, I just remember, when I was in church, man, it's the music that made me feel something, and I'm just like, man, this is some awesome music.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, it's just one, I'm not at all a dancer, but it's just, that's one of the most powerful things about music is when it hits you so good, and you just have this involuntary reaction.
Mm-hmm.
You're just sitting there, you're just bobbing your head, you're patting your foot, just something,
Yeah.
And then some people get up and dance or whatever. I mean, it's just, and then on the other side, you can play something, somebody can sing something and look over and somebody's bawling their eyes out. It's so powerful.
I'm that person. If I hear something that I'm a crier when music moves me that way.
Yeah.
I kind of like have to turn my head to it. And I'm like, oh,
to
my family's like, oh, here he goes again. So I always ask people this question on here, and I think I know the answer to it, but do you feel like you found music, or do you feel like music found you?
Ooh.
If I had to write the biography of Shannon Wickline, I would say that music found you.
It found me.
It was, no matter what, it was going to it was going to happen to you, no matter what.
I'd agree. It found me. Both my parents played. I think it. I don't know. I think it's more than just genetics.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because there's some people I know, they play. Nobody in their family plays, but yeah, it totally found me.
Yeah,
completely. Yeah, and thank God it did.
Yeah,
man. I tell people, I just recently turned 50, and still it's a lifelong passion project, and it's so crazy, because when you're a kid and and then when I was a teenager, 15, 16, 17, really taking this stuff serious. I always saw myself as a music producer. I didn't see myself as a touring musician, and that's just kind of how it happened.
Yeah.
But to be able to kind of really go back to doing that now, it is, I think I'm enjoying it more now, just because of the experiences that I've had. And a lot of the songwriters I work with, some of them, a lot of them are younger. And so I just try to pull from that experience and, just try to offer advice where I can,
Yeah. I always try to tell myself when when I'm feeling content of whatever situation I'm in, I always try tell myself that everything that I did led me to the moment that I'm at right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
All the good and bad experiences along the way prepared me for this great thing that I'm experiencing right now. And I'm sure it's the same with you. I mean, hustling, playing live gigs, doing road gigs, doing sessions. I mean, it all shaped who you are now as a player, producer, everything you're doing.
And it's so funny because I've been producing music since I was like 15. Now I've been, producing tracks for people, for all that time. But weird, crazy thing, like in the last couple of years, man, have I really kind of gotten comfortable with calling myself a music producer?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's such a term that's thrown around so loosely. You know what I mean? And so I always tell people, I'm a composer. And then I'd start explaining kind of what I do. And they're like, dude, you're a producer. And I'm like, well, I don't like to say that. And I'm like, well, you need to. and so I started doing this, like I said, kind of this one man band in the studio thing a long time ago. And all these years later, like I told you, I went to Nashville to try to, I wanted to be the kind of the next big thing. And it wasn't really an arrogance thing. I just had so much, I just knew I could do it. I believed in myself, and I have to give my dad a lot of credit for a couple of things. Number one, he was a songwriter, and so I would put together all the arrangements and stuff for his music, and he would crank them out. So man, I got a lot of practice from him, and and he was also kind of going to throwing back to the pedal steel guitar thing. He was a killer pedal steel guitar player, and he played professionally at one point.
Really?
He toured and did all that kind of thing. So I grew up listening to that. So that's how I can't sit down to a pedal steel guitar and play it. I know how it's supposed to be played, but can I sit down and play it? No. But hearing that and understanding the mechanics of it is how I can make these steel guitar parts sound so real. So that's kind of a way for me to sort of honor him.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of the licks I do. It's his licks. I'm totally stealing his stuff.
Well, and I know you lost your dad. How
about 8 years now.
8 years ago.
He passed away about 8 years ago.
Yeah. I lost mine back in December, and I don't know what it's like for you. I don't know what it was like for you then and how that's progressed or stayed throughout the time, but I miss my dad the most through music. Mm-hmm. I'll hear a song, I'll hear a part, and it just makes me think of him more than anything else. Mm-hmm. And I'll be very honest with you, we had a difficult relationship with each other. But we always had music in common. Right. And we could that was always our middle ground with each other. Mm-hmm. And I'll always try to honor him through that.
Absolutely. And I can't, and to that point, buddy, I can't listen to a Merle Haggard song and not think about my dad.
Same thing, man. I could say the same thing.
Love the Hag, man. And he passed that love on to me. I tell you, I love Merle Haggard. Man.
What a singer. What a songwriter.
Smoothest country music voice ever.
Ever.
Nobody.
Look, I don't want to take anything away from George Jones. All right. Look, I love George Jones, but Merle Haggard, to me, is the greatest country singer that's ever lived.
I tell you, man, it's hard to argue with that. It really is, man. And the songs that guy wrote, God, God. And
they were real,
man. His guitar player,
Yeah.
Roy Nichols. My God.
Yeah.
I stole a lot of good stuff from him.
How could you not, right?
Him some. He attributes a lot of his stuff to Roy Nichols.
Really?
Yeah, Brent Mason, that scary Nashville session cat.
Yeah, man. He's, someday I think he'll figure it all out. I think he'll.
If he keeps on working at it, he'll get there.
I'm just thankful to Mel Bay because it's really helping him build up his playing. What an unbelievable player, and he just keeps getting better.
I tell you, man, there are two guitar players in Nashville who you watch them and you're just like, these people aren't human, I got to see them both live, got to work with one of them. Brent Mason was one of those guys. I got to see him live a handful of times, and my God, what a player. But the other one, and in my opinion, the scariest guitar player on the planet. He has been called the world's greatest unknown guitar player. You know exactly who I'm talking about. Jack Pearson.
Oh my gosh. Jack Pearson.
There's a video, and I'm not going to say too much about it, but there's a video on YouTube where Jack and Brent are on stage together. And I'm not going to say either way, but you watch it and make your own determination.
Wow. Well, I will tell you, I just saw recently, heard on Theo Vaughn's podcast, he's interviewing Billy Strings and asked him who his favorite guitar player was. And he said Jack Pearson. There you go.
I've turned people on to Jack, and it's always the same thing. They're like, where'd you find this guy?
He's the total package.
Jack Pearson is hands down probably the best guitar player I have ever seen in my life.
I agree with you.
I've been around, and no slam to anybody else or Brent Mason, but boy, Jack Pearson is just on another level, man.
He's on other level. I agree.
And just the most humble, sweetest guy on the planet.
Yeah.
Just again, Jack knows he's good.
Mm-hmm.
He ain't gonna come right out. He's not going to come out and act that part. But Jack Pearson knows what Jack Pearson's about. Yeah. He knows.
And it's a shame. And he's had a great career, and he certainly has the respect of his peers. But it's a little bit of a shame, a travesty that he isn't as much of his name doesn't come up in that short list like. Yes. A lot of other people
Absolutely.
do.
Well, that's why he's been deemed the world's greatest unknown guitar player. Mm-hmm. He oh my God, that guy's
yeah.
You listen to this podcast, listen, Jack Pearson.
Yeah, that guy, Jack Pearson, check it out.
I'm telling you, it'll change your life.
I agree. I felt the same way about Danny Gatton. I love Danny Gatton's playing a lot too, and just both of them didn't. Yeah, just
Danny Gatton was another one.
The stuff he did with Buddy Emmons, unbelievable.
My God, what a shame.
What a shame.
What a shame.
What a shame.
But no, I actually got to play with Jack. I was playing in Nashville. We was doing this memorial show for a mutual friend and who had passed away. And they had a keyboard there, but the power supply is one of those wall wart kind of thing. And so the guy was like, just play guitar. And I'm like, all right, no big deal. So I'm up there playing guitar, just doing my thing. It's a blues gig. I'm like, all right, well, I ain't going to try to be a hero. It's a blues gig. And I'm in Nashville. I'm not going to try to be a guitar. My saving grace is like, well, listen, I'm a piano player, so but in walks Jack Pearson.
Oh,
and I'm like, for the love of God, somebody get that power supply fixed.
Yeah,
so he comes up there and he goes, man, can I play guitar with you? And I was like, absolutely not. Are you crazy?
Of all people to walk in while I'm playing guitar.
He goes, I didn't know you play guitar. Shut your mouth. I don't play guitar, Jack. I don't play. No, I don't. So they never could get the damn power supply working. So I'm stuck on stage, and it was, single-handedly the greatest and the most awful night of my life. Because you're on stage with this guy, and you know what he can do.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm confident in my ability, but my God, there's no way. I was like, dude, you just play. You just play. He goes, I want to hear you. I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't.
Yeah. How can you hear me through my tears?
Yeah. Yeah. You can't hear my play. You can't hear my notes over the fear.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Listen to the tremolo.
No joke, man, that was the one. That's the only time. Everybody always asks me, do you get nervous? That was the only time in my life I've been on stage and I was scared.
Yeah.
That's the only time. Damn, Jack Pearson.
Well,
and yeah, he's that good.
He is that good.
He is that good, man.
Yeah, I encourage everyone who's listening to this to go go on YouTube, look his name up.
And the thing about him is, you'll watch a video and he's just shredding some bebop jazz. He sounds like one of the old guys from the 20s or the 30s or whatever, but man, but then you'll watch another video and I don't know how he does this. I'm trying to figure this out. He'll be sitting there playing and all of a sudden it's like this glass slide just emerges. I'm like, where's that thing come from?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's like you watch him playing and you're watching every move he makes, and all of a sudden, boom, there's a slide. And I'm like, wait, what the hell?
Yeah.
And then he starts playing slide, and you're like,
yeah, it's interesting. You can get on YouTube and you can find the latest and greatest players, and within 30 seconds of the first video, you kind of know everything they can do. And then you have someone like him where you could watch 100 videos, and on video number 100, you find out something new that you didn't know he could do. Every time you hear him, it's like, oh, you can do that as well? You can play like that? Yeah, it's just like an endless well of ability.
And his vocabulary. I mean, just his repertoire he's the only guy I've ever seen. You know, you'll be playing a solo or something, and you just get to a point where you just kind of get hung up. It's like, I don't know what else to say. I don't know where else to go from here. Jack is the only guy I've never seen like paint himself into a corner.
No.
I mean, you know, you'll be watching him and it's like, uh-oh. And it's like, and he'll just turn it around and you're like, oh my.
Yeah.
You're like, dude, how does anybody think like that?
Yeah.
But I asked him one time, I was like, man, how are you that damn good? He said, all I do is play. He said, that is all I do. You know, I said, really? He said, yes, I'm home. He's like, I said, I'm rarely without a guitar in my hand.
Yeah.
Said, you can see it.
Well, and I love, I have guitar players that I love listening to.
Me too.
I'm a big Pat Metheny fan. I love the way he plays. I love his thing. But there's some times in some situations I've heard him play and I'm like, ooh, you're not the right fit for this. You can pick Jack up and place him in the middle of any band. You name it. You name any band, and he would not have trouble hanging with the players or the material they're doing.
Okay.
I would argue any style.
Well, I will back your point up. I had called Jack when I was still living in Nashville. I'd called him about a session that was coming up with we were going to do it at his studio or something. And I called him, I was talking to him, and I kept on hearing this racket in the background. I said, Jack, what the hell are you doing? He's like, man, have you ever tried to play a mandolin? I said, well, it's tuned like a fiddle. I said, no, I haven't. He said, yeah, it's weird, man. Everything's in like fours and all that kind of thing. So fast forward, I don't know, year, maybe two, if that. I'm at the Opry playing with Charlie and that banjo player comedian Mike Snyder. He's out there playing and he's a killer player. And man, and I'm just back there and I hear somebody just wearing out a mandolin. I'm like, my God, who is that? Turn on the damn monitor backstage. It's Jack Pearson.
Are you kidding me?
So he comes backstage and I ran into him. I said, you remember when I was on the phone with you? I don't know how long ago. And you was telling me you was just trying to figure out the mandolin. He said, yeah, man, this thing is the weirdest thing. I'm like, dude.
And here you are on the Opry now, just wearing it out.
You just went on the Grand Ole Opry and just scorched the earth and talking about how, how good it was not. I was like, dude, don't tell me that.
Unbelievable.
Everybody was like, who the hell is this guy? I'm like, that's the best guitar player in the world right there. That's who that is.
That's who that is.
Wait, he's a guitar player? Oh, yeah. God.
And now he's the best mandolin player.
I'm telling you.
What a jerk.
And I heard he's a mean B3 player too.
Gosh.
I hate that guy.
I
don't want to hear him play keys. I will. I'll give up.
Untalented.
Like, you can't be better at me than every damn thing. God. He's so good.
He's so good.
And just so unassuming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
The players we meet, man.
And that's what I want to say that I was thinking about that earlier, just that the best part about this whole music thing that we've gotten to do is all the great people that we've been able to meet.
Absolutely.
And I'm thankful to music because you and I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation with each other.
I know. There's so many wonderful things that if it weren't for music, there's no way it'd be possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's going to stick around. I think it's going to be okay.
I got bit by the bug a long time ago and it just, unfortunately it stuck.
Yeah. I'm with you, man.
And I'm too old to, turn it around now. I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah, me too. Well, Shannon Wickline, buddy, I can't thank you enough for just hanging out and letting me ask you all these questions about your life.
Yeah, it's good to catch up with you.
I know.
Good to be on this podcast. This is amazing. I'm so glad you're doing this, man.
Well, it's just been a good, fun time to stay in touch with people and just get to know my best friends better,
Absolutely.
find out things I didn't even know and just let everybody else hear how amazing you are. Like I've known for 20 years, it's just, yeah, it's been a real pleasure getting to do it. So.
Well, that's great. I'm so glad you're doing it, man. And like we were kind of talking, kind of before. I'm trying to figure out what to do next. But I'm telling you, man, I'm really digging this. I can officially call myself a studio player, a full-time studio player, and a part-time music producer.
Yeah. Well, and for the folks listening that certainly will want to check Shannon's stuff out. And hopefully hire him to play on their next release.
I would love that.
How can the folks find more out about you? How can they get in touch with you?
Well, the best thing right now is on my social media stuff, and it's all the same. It's Shannon Wickline Music. And it's ShannonWickline, and on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. And I'm going to be honest, I hadn't really been posting on social media a whole lot. Since I kind of got off the road, I've just been living life,
Yeah.
and I haven't posted as much, but I'm going to start making more content and putting it back out there because I've had not an overwhelming, request for it, but just enough of it to where I'm like, all right, I should probably do something with it and get off my lazy butt and actually put some videos out there.
Well, you just, and I'm happy that you're happy. I can tell you're just so happy in your life, and I'm just so happy and thankful for that. But I also know that there's a whole bunch of people out there, myself included, that just love to hear you play, and everyone would love to hear more music coming out of you. So yeah,
well, I really appreciate that, and I've got more coming. And
that's awesome.
I've always been, over a bulk of my life, I've been threatening to release my own music. It's kind of like I guess the carpenter. It's he's busy working on everybody else's stuff. His own house looks like crap. So yeah, I've been threatening to release a CD since like 1997. And it was a bunch of instrumental stuff. And then I was like, nobody's going to want to hear this crap. And then when I was living in Atlanta, I started hearing all this smooth jazz stuff. And I'm like, that's kind of sort of the stuff I was writing. I'm like, well, it turns out I was wrong. People do listen to this. But I still haven't released it. But I'm going to. And like you said earlier, I'm not, and that's kind of bit me in the butt, not being pigeonholed in one style of music.
Yeah.
That's really, people like, what kind of music do you do? And I'm like, music. It depends.
It depends. Yeah. I do music that speaks to me and other people, and
Yeah. And I had a friend of mine over earlier today, and, I was showing him some of the stuff I was doing. And of course, the most popular thing everybody wants to do is country music. But I showed him some bluegrass stuff that I was working on. I showed him some orchestral stuff that I did. And he was just like, I had no idea, you were that versatile, and I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I just thought you were like a bluesy guy. And I'm like, well,
surprise.
I am. I'm this guy too.
Yeah. You're this guy too. Yeah.
I got too many voices in my head, and they all like different kinds of music, man.
Sybil's playlist.
Sybil's playlist. If I release a CD, that's what it's going to be called.
Sybil's playlist. I love it.
Sybil's playlist. That's wonderful. Oh, God. That's it.
I love you, Shannon Wickline.
Love you too, man. This has been a blast.
Man, I can't thank you enough. And everybody go check him out. You're just going to be blown away. He is as good as it gets.
I appreciate you, buddy.
Thanks,
Thank
buddy.
you so much.
Lord, I tried to see it through. Oh, yes, I did. But it was too much for me.
Thanks for listening to the Bandwich Tapes. I'm your host, Brad Williams. The show's theme is called Playcation and was written by Mark Mundy. Drop me a line at the email address, thebandwichtapes@gmail.com. Make sure to subscribe to receive new episodes of the podcast. And while you're at it, please tell someone else about the show. Thanks for listening.